I actually was not allowed to go to movies. The only movies I ever saw were birthday parties. The attitude in my house was, why would you want to sit in a dark room with a bunch of people watching something on a Saturday when it's sunny and you could be cleaning the garage?
He's very popular. The sportos, the motorheads, geeks, sluts, bloods, wastoids, dweebies, dickheads, they all adore him. They think he's a righteous dude.
I love this quote, you might as well be yourself because everybody else is taken. Well, John knew that.
He was one of those people who people like to hang out with. He didn't even have to say very much, but it was just pleasant to be there and be around him.
He was from Chicago. He loved Chicago.
Mostly what I remember is that he was extremely funny and very unexpected because it came out of this flaccid-looking face. And yet he had a kind of a mullet. So there was a desire to be, you know, of his time.
He saw the world funny. He was funny, super funny.
Never had one lesson. He was a very good laugher. No sound came out when he laughed, but it was very infectious.
He was not what I think people perceive.
He was much more sensitive than he ever showed.
He married his high school sweetheart, and he adored her and his children.
He wore jackets with very large shoulders. But remember, this was the age of Miami Vice, so we must move past that and forgive.
He had a moral sensibility that was very present, I think, in everything he did.
He had the ability to be incredibly heartwarming and side-splittingly funny at the same time. And that was his gift. That was his genius.
By the way, when you're telling these little stories, here's a good idea. Have a point. It makes it so much more interesting for the listener.
A John Hughes movie, you didn't even know, the people didn't even know the title. They said, it's John Hughes, we'll go see the movie. And they did.
I think John always saw himself as the outcast.
He was very complicated.
Very quiet, very private.
98% of the time, he was a positive, upbeat, inspiring guy.
Little teeny teeth, a lot of cigarettes.
What makes anyone who's a great artist need to do what they do? It's some force of nature, and that's what he had.
Do you think I'm gonna be happy? I mean, honestly.
You want to be a writer? You want to be a husband? Maybe it'll work out, who knows?
I didn't start in this business till I was quite old, actually. I mean, I had a different, completely, totally different life. And when I hit 30, I changed. I started doing everything else. I started doing what I always dreamed about as I was sitting in an office, staring out the window, dreaming about doing this. So, I mean, this is my dream. I was just working to be accepted as a writer, which I, never thought. And everybody in my family's always been like a generic businessman.
I never did introduce myself. Del Griffith, American Light and Fixture, Director of Sales, Shower Curtain Ring Division.
So creative was, you could be an advertising executive. That was acceptable because you wore a tie and you went to a job and you worked for a company and you sold products, but you were able to think up stuff and be creative. So it took me a long time to accept the fact that I was actually earning a living as a writer.
It wasn't that he was writing just to make money. He enjoyed it. It was his way of expressing himself.
I was a huge John Hughes fan back when he was a writer at National Lampoon. He wrote one of my favorite articles.
There's an article about kids, and John starts off the article by saying, National Lampoon asked me to write about kids, so I knocked up my wife. And I had some kids.
I stopped taking the pill 3 months ago.
And I thought, hey, this guy's funny.
I first came into contact with John because he sent stuff in through the mail, and I read it, and I was knocked out by how funny it was and how overwritten. So I called John, and I said, I want you to quit your job and come to work for Lampoon. He said, I'd never leave Chicago. So I said, well, you don't have to leave Chicago. And that's how it started.
I did a lot of sort of, suburban guy, trapped in his garage for 3 weeks stories, those kind of things. Quite a change from writing Kellogg's commercials to some of the things I did at the Lampoon. But it was a liberating experience.
I mean, it's ridiculous as a 16-year-old, mostly looking at National Lampoon because there were boobs in it, to suddenly go, oh, wait a minute, there's this brilliant writer as well. Boobs, writer, boobs, writer, boobs, writer. I ended up gravitating toward the boobs, but I did make a mental note of that this guy, John Hughes, was a riot.
Do you have a kiss for Daddy?
Are you kidding?
So that's how it is in their family.
The Lampoon Animal House came out, big hit, so there was a premium on it. Anybody who had any experience writing, I mean, Hollywood likes to follow, they go stand where lightning is struck and wait for it to strike again. So everybody got development deals, and I somehow managed to make good on a couple of them.
One night he called and he was telling me his wife had gone to Arizona and he was left with the kids. He literally had never been to a grocery store and never had done the laundry. He'd never done anything, and he was telling me what he was doing, and it was hilarious. I mean, I couldn't stop laughing. And he said, do you think this would make a movie? And I said, yeah, I think so. And he said, well, I have like 80 pages in a drawer. Do you want to read it? I said, sure, I want to read it. And that was the bones of Mr. Mom. And so I read it and I said, look, I just love this. Let's make it. And that's how we got together.
One day he wrote an article for the magazine called Vacation, and when I looked at it, I flipped. I thought it was just wonderful because I totally related with it. It was about me and my family, and it was about everybody's family. And I called John and I said, we're going to make a movie of this.
He was on the rise as a successful writer, but nothing close to what was to come.
Get your lazy behind out here and put that trunk up in the back.
Oh, no, we've got it.
It's very heavy. She don't mind. She's short and skinny, but she's strong. Her first baby come out sideways. She didn't scream or nothing.
Isn't that something?
I don't do anything else. It's like I just disappear for 6 days and return with 115, 120 pages. It's, it isn't any mystical experience.
I think any actor, comedian especially, is really interested in good scripts. And when this kind of talent comes along, like, it took me 2.5 years to write Roxanne, it took me 3 days to write Planes, Trains, and Automobiles. Or 4, or did it go into 5? This kid's the fastest writer in the world.
He was so quick that one day he came out with Mr. Mom, and I sat down and gave him a few changes, some ideas for the script to improve it. He went outside my office. I had just a little office and an assistant out front. He asked her to get up from her desk. He sat down and he literally wrote the pages. He wrote the changes right there. That was it. And they were great.
I was used to magazine writing, which was nonstop, constant deadline. So when I started writing scripts, I applied those same things, those same sort of deadlines and pressure writing that I did in the magazine business and in the advertising business before that.
I can tell you one anecdote. One night, he was doing rewrites on Some Kind of Wonderful, and I fell asleep, which I usually did, and the music was blasting, and he was chain smoking, and it was that kind of, image.
He wrote late at night. He would just stay up, the whole time and listen to music and write.
And I woke up about 5 in the morning, and he handed me 50 pages, and I went, oh my God, what did you do? I thought we were just gonna do 3 or 4 pages. And he goes, oh no, I didn't get to that. I wrote something else, I'm just curious, take a look at it. He said, I don't even know what it's about. And the title page said, Ferris Bueller's Day Off.
Bueller. Ferris Bueller.
I was about to say to him, you mean you wrote this 50 pages? And he was gone, out of the office, because he had run to the kids' room, his children, because he knew they were getting up, getting ready for school. That's what was on his mind more than what he had just written or anything else.
I have the feeling that these things were playing out in his head before he wrote them down, and the writing he was channeling something.
My writing technique is I think about an idea for a long time, and I know how it's going to begin, I know how it's going to end, and most importantly, I know who the characters are. So writing it is not the hardest part. I really I watch the film in my head and then just write down what I'm seeing. It's like watching the movie slowly, and you can change it So if you see the story going this way and say, it's too sad, I can move it back. I just picture it all as a write. I don't know how anybody else writes. I've never really discussed it with anyone.
Drugs?
Thank you, no, I'm straight.
I meant, are you in here for drugs?
I don't know why I'm here.
Why don't you go home?
Why don't you put your thumb up your butt?
And I think a script has to read well. So I try to give every character a different speech pattern, not just the words that they say, but how they say them, what sorts of words they use, and do they use long sentences.
I am not going to sit on my ass. As the events that affect me unfold to determine the course of my life, I'm going to take a stand.
It's very staccato.
I want a seat in first class where I was booked and ticketed over a month ago.
I always try to tailor the speech patterns for the characters.
This is a really volcanic ensemble you're wearing.
You're not a good loser, you're just a loser, period.
9 times.
And then when I'm finished with the script, I read the entire thing out loud to myself. And you learn a lot about your dialogue when you read it out loud, because it's built for the ear, and you read it out loud and listen to it. I think if a lot of people did that, the overall quality of dialogue would probably improve.
I can tell you, over the years that I worked with him, I saw so many scripts that got to page 75 or 90, and he threw them in the garbage can because he didn't feel like he had the ending that he wanted, or something didn't, feel right to him that any other writer who had gotten that far into the script would have kept, but he didn't.
Wood's expensive. Words are cheap.
He once said to me, look, our names are on this. It better be great. It meant a lot to him that his name was on it. He thought it was an honor, and he was right.
Why are you holding my hand? Where's your other hand? Between 2 pillows. Those aren't pillows.
Hopefully you would go to these films to meet these people, and these people would be someone that you would be interested in meeting and understanding, and your experience matching the experience in the movies.
If your mother bought us a couch, she'd want to come over all the time and admire it.
Would that be so terrible?
Let's not fight.
I think what people really respond to is that these characters were very real to him. So whether or not it took him a week or a month to write the script, these characters, I don't know, existed in his universe.
Bon appetit.
Very uptown.
Hey, you're smiling. You should smile more often.
Okay. Whenever I try not to smile, I smile more.
You would read his scripts and the characters would jump off the page. I mean, it became so visual. It seemed simple to create these people.
I start with character, and really start and finish with characters. I don't do complex plots generally. I keep my plots fairly simple. I mean, what was the story of Breakfast Club? I mean, there were lots of people who said, this movie, there's no story. I've taken the time and energy that would go into building, plot and put it into characters.
Whether you talk about Ferris or Ducky or Andy from Pretty in Pink, he understood the pathology of those characters, and there was a sense of truth to their journeys. It wasn't, let's try and have a character who's funny.
I got a slight problem here. I don't have the $42.50. I have $2 and a Casio.
People fascinated him. He observed things, and then he just filed things away. People in his life, people that he met, things that he observed, and he filed them away, and then he found a way to use them later.
He listened to everything, and he could remember, what people said exactly. He really had a writer's brain.
I borrow liberally from the past and from the present. I mean, all this stuff is somehow, I've been witness to it either firsthand or I've either gone through it or seen someone else going through it.
I've never seen a guy get picked up by his testicles before.
So I take these things and I see and somehow work them in there. I haven't gotten anybody mad at me yet.
The wonderful thing about John is that he delights in such small things and such sort of strange little idiosyncrasies of human nature, and I think that's what he brings to light in his films, and therefore I think that makes them much more enjoyable and accessible to more people, which is why they're so successful.
Ferris, my father loves this car more than life itself.
A man with priorities so far out of whack doesn't deserve such a fine automobile.
John told me about some friend of his that had a father that when the dad came home from work, the children were not allowed to talk to him. So this is the kind of home that Cameron lived in. He said, your father's the kind of guy that will make sure that all the screws and all the hinges and all the doors line up straight up and down. And then the hockey jersey thing. He said, you have no relationship with your father, but your grandfather lives in Detroit. And you love your grandfather, and your grandfather takes you to hockey games. And it's just some magic that you have with your grandfather, and he's the male figure in your life. And I don't know why he didn't, this was all backstory, I don't know why he didn't put it in the movie. But John was full of this stuff. He was full of all these little details.
This is the real world. It looks like this. It sounds like this. It's played like this. Most of my humor comes out of real situations and real people. Every script I write begins exterior Chicago suburbs, 4-bedroom colonial home. The thrust of most of my work has been ordinary people, the regular folks, the guys that live on the right and left of you, the people you grew up next to. It's keeping it as ordinary as possible and as true to life as possible.
John expressed the most important element of any movie, and especially of any comedy, relatability.
I think I see my dad.
He had such insight and honesty, and that's what audiences related to.
She said she'd meet you here?
Not in those words.
In any words?
I believe in doing what I can to make a script and ultimately a movie something that you can identify with.
I love this woman. I love this woman, and I have to tell her.
I mean, I've liked those movies best.
Do you feel this vehicle is safe for highway travel?
Yes, I do. Yes, I really do. I believe that. I know it's not pretty to look at, but it'll get you where you want to go.
I read the script and I was laughing and crying at it. It was just so brilliant. It was as if I wrote it myself, and my lawyer's working on that now.
It's hard to pinpoint what it is, but when those movies first came out, they seemed like a very new style of movie.
Smacked of originality, of his point of view about life.
You would sit and watch his movies like Vacation or 16 Candles or Breakfast Club, and you'd say, I know those guys. I was a kid like that. I know those people.
I think everyone's certainly been through a best friend disapproving of what you're doing. And everyone's been through a parent wanting you to do something and you wanting to do something else.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I think everybody's experienced everything that's happened in every movie that he's ever written, you know?
I guess he saw the parallels in the kids of the 80s with what he went through, I guess, in the early 60s or in the late 60s.
Most of my younger years were spent listening, having to listen, and watching. In high school, for me, it was watching everybody doing everything, which I think may be one of the reasons why I remember so much of it, is I just was aware of it all the time.
Whatever experiences he had in high school were absolutely branded on John.
John always said that he was the fairest guy, and his girlfriend, who later became his wife, was Sloane, and then there was always somebody who was sitting in the back seat, who was the Cameron guy.
I obviously didn't know him when he was a teenager, but I have a feeling he was a quiet observer type. I doubt he was the playful guy cutting school. I'll bet he was real quiet.
I actually shot at my old high school, and I shot at the door I used to escape from when I would slip out of school. I mean, it was actually the same exact location. Well, that was kind of fun. Kept time traveling back.
So John definitely saw himself, or remembered himself as the Ferris character, but, you know, we're all combinations at any given time.
This place is my church. I can come here and what anybody says about me doesn't matter.
I wanted to be a painter in high school. I thought that it was a cool thing to do. No one else did, of course. Just me, and that was it. When you're passionate about something at that age, and it consumes you, in my case, it was art, it goes a long way towards getting you through loneliness, because you've always got your art to fall back on. And it builds a certain amount of self-reliance. I didn't really much care what other people thought of me, because I could go look at my work and say, I like that, and I did that. And it was, self-recognition.
Should we dance?
Wouldn't be unheard of.
John and I had a few sort of key conversations about Ducky's relationship with Andy, Molly's character, and how deeply John had empathized with that.
Just because I'm going out with Blaine doesn't mean I can't be friends with you. I mean, it doesn't change the way I feel about you.
You could tell the wounds were so fresh from high school for him that he'd always have that. He'd always have that rawness, and as you can see, turn it into something that he could give back to people.
I don't know why, but there was a very long period in his life where he was innately and distinctly in touch with the teenage voice, with the raw emotions that one has, the feeling out of place and feeling that nobody understands you.
I mean, you are their movie maker for the young people.
I've generally dealt with relationships within young social structure. I went into a particular genre because I saw a need there for a film.
When I met him, he was 35 or 36 years old, but he was definitely keyed in to what made young people tick, and he was their advocate.
I think that John really related to teenagers. I think in some ways he maybe felt like he was still a teenager.
I really don't like labeling people, teenagers. They're people. I just think that people have tended to think that if you're going to do a serious movie, it had better be about adults, because people under 21 aren't serious. And I think that the thoughts and feelings and emotions of someone 16 are as valid as my thoughts at 35. Why should, human emotion be discounted for age? I don't believe in that.
Pardon my French, but you're an asshole.
You're absolutely right, sir. You've hit the nail right in the head.
And I think that's one of the reasons why the films work, is that, and it's one of the reasons why I get slapped a lot by the critics, because a lot of people, for some reason, don't like to give kids that sort of credit for having problems. I don't know why.
You don't know what's important. You don't know what the hell you're talking about. I do know what the hell I'm talking about. You just never listen to me. You only hear what you want. Will you listen to me for once?
If you want to talk about revisionist history, you want to see how the critics treated a lot of this work, you'll see it's an eye-opener. Now, of course, the intelligentsia put it up on a pedestal. But that's not how they supported him then. It was always teen movie, and it never took it that seriously.
I've been criticized for stating the kids' side of things a little too emphatically. And my point of view on that is, well, no one else does. So if I'm too emphatic, it's balanced out by the lack of, the general lack of empathy that I think society in general has for teenagers.
Good morning. Welcome to another day of higher education.
Hi, Ducky. How are you?
Not all that bad, considering I'm in this dump.
The way I really write these is, this is what I would have written if I had this skill when I was 17. Because this is what I was thinking about. These are the same things that I felt, that I believed in. And I'm just, it took me this long to get enough skill to, make a screenplay out of these things.
Ray, this is 1987. Did you know that a girl can be whatever she wants to be?
I know, my mom's a plumber.
When you're in the middle of something, it's very hard to chronicle it. It's much easier when you've been through it, you can look back, and the wounds have healed, and things have been put into perspective. The highs aren't quite so high and the lows aren't quite so low. These pictures really have to be done from the inside out. You can't go in saying, I'm going to interpret young characters and present them the way I think they should be. You really have to go in and say, I'm doing this film for people that are going through this situation right now.
When something reminds you of how you felt when you were a kid, how intensely you felt love and how much hope you had and how absurd things were, it's fun to go back and remember that. I mean, he defined a generation,
Adams.
Here.
Adamley.
Here.
Bueller. Bueller.
Bueller? Anyone? Anyone?
I'd shown how difficult life at that age can be. And I felt somewhat of an obligation to show how much fun it can be. This is a time of enormous turmoil in your life. It's also a time of great joy.
Ferris Bueller, you're my hero.
You bet. Shoot up!
Ferris Bueller is a little bit different. It was about sort of serious things in a way, but always wanted it to be primarily funny.
The theme of the thing is really about approaching life not from the dark side, but from the bright side. I really just wanted to do something that showed the positive values of not taking yourself quite so seriously, which is one of the great problems of that age, is that you tend to take yourself very, very seriously, and with good reason.
Pardon my French, but Cameron is so tight that if you stuck a lump of coal up his ass, in 2 weeks you'd have a diamond.
There are times when you would benefit by not taking yourself quite so seriously. I mean, their adventure was nothing extraordinary. They went to downtown, they went to an art museum, they had lunch, and they went to the world's tallest building, and they did things that were accessible to everybody. You know, it wasn't like they went to another planet or, you know, went to Indochina. They just went downtown Chicago.
Are you suggesting that I'm not who I say I am?
I'm suggesting that you leave before I have to get snooty.
Snooty?
Snotty.
Snotty?
Okay, Abe. Let's go.
I never thought of it as, and I don't think either did John, as a terribly realistic. It was more like a fable, you know?
With Ferris, I was saying, take a day off from school and all of those sort of pressures, and just look at what is good about your life. It's a minor celebration of life. I mean, it's despite Mr. Gaddafi and the French and, you know, all those sorts of things. There are a magnitude of things that are wonderful about life, living, cities, families, friends. I mean, I think Ferris Bueller is a character that is worth getting to know. I think there are some things to be learned from it, but it's June. Let's have some fun.